Joe Biden recently addressed the nation following the recent mass shootings, telling Congress to pass a spate of gun control laws. In his speech, Joe Biden said this.
According to new data just released by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, guns are the #1 killer of children in the United States of America. The #1 killer. More than car accidents, more than cancer. Over the last 2 decades, more school-age children have died from guns than on-duty police officers and active-duty military combined.
What Joe Biden is not telling you is that the CDC study that he's referring to defines children as persons 1 to 19 years old. Last I checked, an 18 and a 19-year-old were considered adults, not children. What he's also not telling you is that the vast majority of kids are killed by guns in smaller day-to-day incidents, not mass or school shootings. 65% of those so-called children's deaths are homicides, and 35% are suicides. So if most of these homicides are not from mass shootings, this means they're from inner-city gang violence, and I'll prove it using data from anti-gun groups. Everytown for Gun Safety, an anti-gun group, acknowledges that gun homicides are concentrated in cities. Half of all gun homicides took place in just 127 cities, which represented nearly a quarter of the US population. Within these cities, gun homicides are most prevalent in racially segregated neighborhoods with high rates of poverty. The CDC study also noted that firearm death rate for black children was more than 4 times that of white children, and white children were still more likely to be killed by motor vehicles than guns. Our inner cities are not filled with white children. They are filled with black and brown children, some of who are in gangs and cliques shooting at each other over long-standing beefs and drug territory. There's literally an entire genre of rap called drill music inspired by these types of shootings. Even the Giffords Group, which is another anti-gun organization, acknowledges that according to an analysis conducted by the New York Times in September, approximately twice as many people are shot in Chicago when it's hot than when it's cold. More people spend more time outside means more social interaction and greater likelihood of conflict breaking out. This CDC study was based on 2019 and 2020 numbers. That's COVID, when everything was shut down and kids couldn't go to school. So now, instead of being out in the streets for just the summertime, there we were out in the streets shooting at each other for an entire year, nonstop. These kids were already poor as hell, and then you shut down the economy during COVID. So now they're even more financially strapped. The cops couldn't really deal with anything because every other day another city was on fire because of riots. What the did you think was gonna happen? Of course the number of homicides would go up. They were already sitting on the bottom of society when the bottom fell out. This isn't a gun issue. It's a socioeconomic issue. If it's a gun issue, why aren't the white kids in suburbia shooting each other up in the streets? Did Elon Musk fly all the white kids to Mars during COVID? No, they were out of school too. But when you're living in the comforts of suburbia, even during COVID, your biggest problem is your Twitch live stream lagging, not you trying to avoid getting caught lacking by your ops. Hell, the report says it clear as day. White children were still more likely to be killed by motor vehicles than guns. Joe Biden wants you to think that it's a bunch of little kids dying because of school shootings. Yes, that happens, but school shootings are not why guns have become the leading cause of death for American kids. These aren't kids. They're teenagers and young adults that you cared so little for, you couldn't be bothered to deal with why they were actually doing what they were doing in these streets. Joe Biden gave that speech to have his 94 crime bill passed, which included some of the strictest forms of gun control this country has ever seen. It was the law of the land for 10 years, and not once in those years did Joe Biden then go back and try to address the underlying socioeconomic issues that he admits he was fully aware of in the video. That's because Joe Biden didn't want a solution, he wanted control. You could argue that I'm being pedantic or playing semantics about the age of these so-called children, because at the end of the day, young people are still dying, and I understand and respect that sentiment. However, the problem is, even if Joe Biden got his gun control laws, nothing would change because the teens and young adults in these inner cities that are doing the shootings and making up the vast majority of gun homicides don't get their guns legally, they get them on the streets. So unless the real issues are addressed, nothing will change, and these teens and young adults will continue to die. I'll leave you with this. DC has universal background checks, gun owner licensing, handgun dealer licensing, red flag laws, assault weapon restrictions, high capacity magazine bans, waiting periods, child access prevention laws, open carry regulations, and strong concealed carry laws. DC has every gun control law that Joe Biden wants to pass and then some. Yet and still in 2020, DC had the highest firearm death rate in the country. Just saying. The way I see it, I think it only fair if you're going to come and keep trying to attack our rights under the Second Amendment, I get to make shirts like this, making fun of you and getting a kick out of it, while still defending our Second Amendment. So, if you feel the same way, be sure to jump on MrColionNoir.com and get your Let's Go Brandon merch. Got hats too, got the defund gun control hats as well. And at the end of the day, a lot of the pieces on the store are really honestly designed to be talking points. They're designed to be subtle, more or less talking points to get people to have the conversations about firearms that we normally don't have in this country. However, sometimes we create designs like this, which are a little more blatant, because I think sometimes people really need to see how many people actually feel the way that I do with respect to Joe Biden and the Second Amendment, as everybody else who I know feels the same way. And only then will we start to really truly understand how diverse we are as a country on our politics, but then maybe possibly sort of come together and have a conversation. Either way, let's go, Brandon. Guns aren't political. That's why I need your help getting this message to spread on YouTube by clicking the thumbs up button, leaving a comment to let me know what you think of the video, then subscribing to the channel. But most importantly, click that bell symbol. For products featured in this video, click the links in the description.